Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel for another edition of Andy the Cabby Cabby, live and alive from the garage. Hope everyone is okay today and enjoying, well, we're nearly at the end of the week, aren't we? Now, as you see from the title of this live stream, Runcorn and Helsby By-Election trial judgment day is September the 11th, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. Pray for justice. Who I have waiting in the green room is Graham Moore, the leader of the English Constitution Party. Precisely half an hour ago, he received some very big news. And what I'm going to do without further delay is bring him on and we can talk about this and where we're going now. So here he is. Good morning, Graham. How are you?
Good morning. I am very well, thank you. Sorry for the delay, but I actually lost one of my hearing aids and I was trying to find it. It dropped on the floor, and you know when something bounces and then you don't know where it's gone. I ended up because otherwise I couldn't hear it. I wouldn't have been able to hear a word. So I'm very well, Andy, and I'm very pleased to be on this show because you are one of the, and there wasn't many of us, alternative media news that have helped us promote this particular election petition. So, did you want me to explain things or what?
Yeah, I think just very briefly for a couple of minutes, just for the uninitiated or people who haven't followed this story. Just go back a couple of months because we've got where you stood in a Runcorn and Helsby by-election. We know that Sarah Posham has returned as the MP. You very quickly identified, let's say, irregularities to keep it as simple as possible within the voting process. There was a hearing in London to determine whether two hearings in London to determine whether a trial would be granted to, sort this mess out. And
Right.
Half an hour ago, you received some news regarding that. So you take it from there.
So the biggest part of this, and to the audience, there were 4 respondents, and that is the head of the Royal Mail, because leaflets were not delivered, etc. The Chief Constable of Cheshire, because they had interfered with our campaigning and had not investigated election fraud or irregularities, which they're supposed to do. There is the returning officer for returning, which we believe is a fraudulent return, and there is Sarah Posham. So I was up against basically 2 King's Councils. They was all trying to strike out the petition. An election petition means, if granted, means 2 High Court judges travel to Runcorn and Helsby on behalf of the people of Runcorn and Helsby. 2 High Court judges listen to what's gone on, right? And that basically they can then either or do both. They can ask for a recount, a full individual recount, meaning not a bundle count, right? So in other words, they look at every single vote again, a full recount, or at the end of that process, they can decide there needs to be a new election. Right, so they'll make sure that there's a new election because there's so much skullduggery gone on. It isn't what's known in law as a free and pure election. So therefore, there needs to be another one. Right. Cut a long story short, I was up against 2 King's Councils, 2 barristers, and an army of solicitors. And just to make sure your audience know this, for almost a day and a half they was arguing to strike out the petition. They are terrified of this coming before 2 judges, and the end result is I won, and that means there will be an election petition to turn over that to void that election, or to have a full recount, which could lead to a voiding. The most important thing is I'm just a normal everyday person, and if I can stand up, by the way, just one elector can do this. This is why it's so important to vote, right? Because if you didn't vote in that election, you cannot bring an election petition, and a single elector in a general or a by-election can bring this petition. So obviously they're trying to hit me at the moment with various costs, etc. I haven't read the order yet, but we are going to challenge it. Just to let you know that I won, and yet now they're still trying to make me be the person who's paying for it, right? When I've said that's not happening, right? In effect, I won the legal arguments, and making sure your audience know this. Nowhere in any of my arguments, my oral arguments, or any of my skeleton arguments did I say anywhere I'm a living man, right? I presented the law of the land. I presented our rights to 2 High Court judges in front of a packed gallery. They listened, and they found in my favour, right? Against 2 King's counsels, 2 barristers acting independently for 4 respondents, and an army of solicitors. And I can tell you, them people don't like the fact that we, the people, won. So that, in a nutshell, is the petition. The election trial in Runcorn and Helsby goes ahead.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I mean, just breaking away from this for a minute, I was in London myself probably a couple of weeks ago now. Time flies, at the Royal Courts of Justice with Noel Wilcox about the ULEZ signs, and you and I discussed this privately when I got home. And yet again, through trying to, use some kind of complication to sweep it under the carpet, get rid of it, because they too were crapping themselves about the possibilities, they tried to strike that out also. In that case, they were successful, but obviously not in yours. It's lawfare against the normal working class men and women of this country, isn't it?
It is lawfare. I mean, I did listen to your video with your friend. There are various ways in which that they could actually challenge that judgment, and I did say that to you, and I sent over the messages to you. Again, oh, yeah. I'm not. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of this. I do not take advice from solicitors or barristers, British, right? Because they're part of the system. They're suckling at the teat that pays them. They have imposed upon the people unlawfully an administrative form of law which comes from the EU or Scotland, right? England is a common law jurisdiction. And therefore, it is the common law concept of law that should be applied in our courts. And what they do is they put an administrative element in front of it and try and knock you out. So just to make sure everyone's aware, in our case, I actually used some cases from ex-colonies, right? And this went to what's their version of the UK Supreme Court, but in England, the Judicial Committee, I think it's called, and they're the same UK Supreme Court judges, but they're in a different function, and they agreed with some of my arguments in this case, which was that you cannot have tabulated legalism getting in the way of an undoubted right, for example, which is part of the argument that I put forward. But let me, if I can just bring this up on the screen, and then I can tell you, this is the final judgment. So I will send it over to you. The important thing is, this is how serious they took this. It is a 32-page, 83-paragraph judgment in which, by the way, we have set a precedent in law going forward. In other words, this case and this judgment will be used for the next 100 years and maybe 200 years. And that's really important. That what they're doing currently is this is they are absolutely spitting feathers that they lost, right? So I just want everyone to know that when I say they're spitting feathers, I have seen the furore and the anger from these people, all this different, the teams of these legal professionals, so-called legal professionals, that they're now trying to go for leave for special leave for appeal, because this is not an appealable judgment, right? So they're now going for a special. We need to take this to the Supreme Court, and it's just a normal everyday person, right? That stood up for you, by the way, because obviously this isn't just, and I've explained that to the High Court judges, this is in the public interest. We have systemic fraud in our elections when our elections state they should be free and pure, and they're not, right? And again, I've used the old law books just to make sure everyone's aware of this, right? It's not a green screen. I actually present a real law, and I've done it not just for us, because we stand, and again, I said to the High Court, we stand for disabled people, we stand for pensioners, right? We are the people not being represented, and yet they stole our votes. Anyway, there's lots there. Let me just go to the end. The most important part of this is the conclusion, right? So people can read through the judgment, but I'll just read this out. And the conclusion is that paragraph 83, for these reasons, we refuse the third and fourth respondents' application to dismiss the petition. The trial of the petition should go ahead. That's it, right? So that means two judges now travel from Runcorn and Helsby, and they create a court, basically. We pull in the evidence, we question people. It'll be me doing it, and they will have all their solicitors and King's counsels lined up against me. Two High Court judges, not just one. This is an old common law plea. This is proper common law, by the way, just to make sure everyone understands. This is the Court of Common Plea that actually listens to these cases. It goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And that is a benefit to the people. So we finally got a chance of a real person, meaning a lay person, standing up in front of two judges and telling them this is how crooked our elections are.
Absolutely. I mean, when I first started talking about this several months ago, there's one comment that kept coming up, and it had the words Graham and sore loser in it repeatedly. Now, people need to get their head out of their arse, to be blunt, because one of the things I want to point out, if you look at the results of this by-election, Graham got 50 votes. If you look a decade ago in a completely different constituency, completely different people, Graham got 50 votes. Now, when a statistician from the Royal College of Statistics was consulted on this, they said the odds of that happening was 1,000,000 to 1. Now, when you look at that and other things that have occurred in other elections, not only this one,
correct,
there is a very big problem with our system of voting in this country. So it's not about Graham at all. If we're going to change things, we need a system of voting which is legitimate, legal, lawful, and fair and open. And it's obvious we don't have it. And what Graham has done has opened the door to discuss that and, try and do something about it, get it changed so we can get our country back, England.
Well, absolutely agree with you. Andy, let me tell you something again. There were a number of real alternative media that supported this case, and you was one of them. That's why I've come on here this morning. You're literally the first to know. No one knows this. I couldn't even tell my dad, who's 95, right? And the reason I couldn't is because my sister supports Reform UK, even though I've told her they are as crooked as the rest. And just to point this out to people, right? Sarah Pouchin is one of the people that tried to strike this out, So, and by the way, someone sent a letter not only to me, but to Reform UK, to Sarah Pouchin and someone else. I've got the letter in front of me. It then names 2 senior people in the Royal Mail at Runcorn who hid, right, and have been suspended for hiding our leaflets and in effect interfering with an election. And Sarah Pouchin knew that, right, and has still tried to strike out the petition. So she's actually just now, she is just as complicit in the election fraud. She is saying, well, I don't care how I got there, as long as I got there. That's corruption, right? And Sarah Pouchin knew, because that letter states it was sent to her and sent to the Conservative and Union Party, sent to the Labour Party. It was sent to Keir Starmer, right, to say exactly what's going on. So they all know, and the Royal Mail in particular, even though, so they're not in the case at the moment, right? But there is a separate element of what we're doing at the moment, that the police, so they've removed 2 of the respondents. The High Court has removed the Royal Mail, Emma Gilmore, and who by the way resigned. They have now also removed the Chief Constable, right? So there's another way. There's 2 other ways that we can bring them back into the frame, which I intend to do, right? Because if you don't bring them other 2 back into the frame, the High Court is in effect giving everyone, bar the returning officer and the candidate, meaning Sarah Pouchin, everyone else has got immunity, right, to interfere, legal immunity to interfere with an election. That's disgusting, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's not what our laws say. So we do need to keep going forward on that. So just to make sure everyone again is aware of this, what does this mean? It means there is now an election trial, right? So in Runcorn and Helsby, because they're the important people here, and the evidence is placed before the 2 judges. They make a decision. We win when they say there needs to be a full individual ballot recount. As you said, with reference, don't forget, when I stood in the last election prior to this one, I got in Chorley against the Speaker of the House of Commons. I got 1,007 votes, right? People know what we stand for. The disabled people in an area know what we stand for. The pensioners know what we stand for. They like what we say and they vote for us. Them votes have been stolen. So it's important that you tell your audience, when anyone, especially the trolling types, say you just got hard feelings. Let me tell you something. My membership paid for them leaflets. They didn't get delivered, right? When someone votes for us and you don't put it in my pile, you are misappropriating that vote. You are committing fraud, right? The only thing that we have to work out now with this trial is whether it's fraud or negligence, right? And the evidence being placed before the court is we don't believe it's negligence. We believe it's deliberate. Why is it so important? Well, the simple answer is this, and I want people to listen to what I'm saying, right? If you allow corruption in free elections and allow corrupt MPs to be put in place, what do you get? You get a place of Parliament that's full of crooks. If that happens, they change the Constitution. Oh, hang on a minute. Haven't they done that a few times? What do you mean, the Constitutional Reform Act of 2005? Would you think they could have already done that? So they changed the Constitution because they're crooked parliamentarians, right? Then what happens? They change the Constitution and they decide, right? They decide, these crooks decide, we're going to put some crooks in the High Court and in the Supreme Court. How are they going to do that? They change our Constitution, and then they say it isn't the Lord Chancellor who's going to decide who the judges are now. It's us, the crooked politicians. So they create and they pick the judges. right? So all of a sudden, let's just say these judges are Fabians or associated with the Labour Party or have some sort of ideological link to communism and or even fascism, right? And all of a sudden, the whole country turns to doodah, right? Because of it started off with a single election being crooked. That's how they did this, and that's how they've done it over time, and that's what we're standing up against.
Absolutely. There's one thing that people need to understand as well. I mean, 5 years ago, I was one of them, but after interacting with you and reading and learning and everything else, it's very, very self-apparent to me, at least, and I'm just a working class taxi driver, that something is very wrong with the setup of our island of Britain. We'll call it. You talk about English common law. That goes across, correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes across England and Wales. You've got Scotland with their own legal system, and obviously let's not mention the bloody EU, but all of the things they're talking about, the European Convention of Human Rights and everything else, is a load of old crap. Because if you look at the United Kingdom, which at the end of the day is a political union, this is deliberately usurping, misjointing, and trying to sweep under the carpet English common law. You talk about Fabians, this passage here, is it volume 8 of Halsbury's Laws of England? It's
correct.
Very important you read that in purple, which basically says anybody of a communist or fascist association cannot be employed to work in a job, the nature of which is vital to the security of the state. They get purged. That is the laws of England. And look at what we've got.
Correct. No, absolutely correct. People don't realise how deep this is. And what they don't like, meaning the system, the regime, whatever it is, right? What they don't like is a normal, everyday working class person, right? In other words, not someone with a degree stuck up his backside, being misinstructed on the laws of England, telling people the truth, right? That's what they don't like. They are vicious, and they are being vicious towards me in the background. Everyone has said to me, I mean, anyone who knows me knows I've been under immense pressure with this. I mean, they're trying to hit me, even though I've won, right? They've tried to hit me with costs probably in excess of £1 million. I mean, just one respondent is somewhere in the region, just one, and there's 4 of them, is £275,000. And that, so a normal everyday person, even the Magna Carta, if you go back that far, tells you shouldn't be paying for justice, right? So what we're doing is we're the people that are going forward. And just to make sure everyone's aware of this, right? People like Advance UK and Ben Habib, who is a British Pakistani, right? He knows all about this case, right? The people in Advance know about this case. Not once have they said, let's have a look at this. Reform know all about this case. In fact, they've gone in there and tried to strike it down, right? They don't want the people represented. That's the crucial part of this. And when you've got genuine people, working class people, right? Listen, I am not a comrade, right? I do apologise. I've got a.
That's right.
I don't know if that's interfere. Let me just go back on.
No, we can hear you.
Right. So all these people need to know. We've set up the English Constitution Party. What you just said earlier on, I just want to make sure people again are clear on this, right? There is a pincer movement against England from 2 Roman law jurisdictions. One is Scotland, and it's not the Scottish people, it's the regime, right, that controls Scotland, right? And the European Union. They are both administrative law, otherwise known as Roman law, and it's a tick box jurisdiction, right? Whereas England is the common law. United States of America is the common law, right? And they are trying to attack us because it is the common law as a justice system is the ultimate social justice system. There is nothing better because each case is on its own merits, right? And with an administrative law system, all your rights go and have done and are currently. And the only people supporting your rights are us. And just to make sure you're aware of this, I mean, when you look at our leaflet, right, we've got the St. George's Cross on every one of them. This is very similar to this, right? That's the American We the People pamphlet they give everyone out. Our leaflet tells you what your rights are, right, all the way through it. They hate us. And the only person standing up in that court for you and for your rights is the English Constitution Party. So, again, I was embargoed. I wasn't allowed to speak about this, even though I know I'd won. To my audience that may be listening, I had to come off the social media under threat, just in case I slipped up. So I've come off the social media. I haven't done any live videos. I haven't spoke to anyone, not even my dad, which, just to let you know, Andy, I've even told you before I told my dad. So, 5. And I'll be ringing him up after this and explaining the situation to him. And again, he's 95. And I just wanted him to know that, because he knew I went up against two King's Counsels and 2 barristers and an army of solicitors. Don't forget, these people are putting in the ridiculous costs that they're coming out with. And just to make sure people understand this, the judge found in judges, plural, found in my favour, and it all goes ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, you told me a few days ago that this was coming, and the fact that you literally were powerless to say or do anything until 10:30 this morning. Otherwise, the penalties would have been very serious indeed. You could be in prison right now if you told anybody or said anything before 10:30 this morning.
They actually warned me for you to discuss this case or the judgment or to say what the result is prior to 10:30 this morning. You would be held in contempt of court and sent to prison. So I want people to understand something else. In the background, still going on now, right? But in the background, since the draft judgment was handed down to me, right? All of these others have acted as a team against me, right? For trying to do an appeal, for trying to do it. And remember this, I'm not allowed to talk to anyone, not even me dad, right? So I've got to then try and formulate on my own without any assistance from anyone. Not that people don't want to help me, they do, but under contempt of court laws, they're saying you can't speak to anyone because you're not a legal professional. So the English Constitution Society, which is the other arm, the educational arm of who we are, couldn't help me. Everyone's had to stand back, right? So I just think in cases of litigants in person, I think that's a very unfair situation because the bullet, they have, in my opinion, tried to, and I've actually expressed this to the court, by the way, they are legally bullying me. And again, so we won. That's it. That's all. And again, expressing this to everyone, nowhere did I use any of the nonsense in the background of these other groups of people who I regard as communists and a psyop against real people who understand the law. And nowhere did I ever say in any of my paperwork or, and I want to make sure this, or in my oral arguments, did I ever stand up and say, read me your oath or I'm a living man, right? That's all nonsense. It's a communist psyop that people have been sucked into and they need to stop, right? Because you are collaborating with the enemy by doing that.
What I want to reiterate a couple of things. Just Graham. Now, Graham is just a normal bloke, and those books behind him, I'm all too aware of how many volumes our constitutional laws go across on that back shelf. I'm well aware of the monetary value of those books as well and what's contained within them. And what you see on the screen now, Graham Moore, English Constitution Society, is what's pulled this fantastic victory for you the people of England off. Now, let's get it real, right? We go to trial, Runcorn and Helsby, and you win again. What do you think could happen? Let's say there's they say, right, scrap the election, too many problems, let's rerun it. What do you reckon would happen?
Well, first of all, the public will know. The mainstream media, by the way, are also complicit in this regime fraud, which is what it is. So understand what I just said. This is systemic. It's a regime fraud against the people, right? The oligarchies, if you want to call them that, are against the people and putting their own organised criminals in that parliament, right? What will happen is, when they find for us, which they will, bearing in mind there was only 6 votes in this, right? So I personally witnessed 116 votes, right? So that means literally these other votes, the 66 votes, have disappeared to somewhere. If there's only 6 votes in it, right, they've gone somewhere. If they went to Sarah Pouchin, then she should not be returned as a member of parliament, right? If they was packed and they don't know, they can't judge how much packing they've done, and they've packed the Labour candidate, right? In other words, it's an obvious fraud, and they've stolen my votes, and they've stolen independent people's, so people who stood as independents, and I believe they've done that. They've not just stolen my votes, they've stolen all other people's votes, and they've misappropriated them votes and put them in the Labour pile. Because what that actual election showed, and I want everyone to remember this, that election was a punishment election. And I'll tell you for why. Because the Labour MP, if everyone resigned, because he beat up a constituent, right? That's how much contempt the Labour Party have got for normal everyday people. He beat up a constituent. He ended up he got sentenced to a term in prison, and then within days got released on appeal, right? Think of Lucy Connolly.
Oh, yeah.
So the system itself is protecting its own, right? The system, the regime. So what actually happens? It means the people will start to see how crooked these elections is. It goes against English constitutional law, freedom of elections and purity of elections, right? There's a whole section of law on elections in England, right? And what will happen is the people will see how corrupt it is. And then, to be fair, it is my opinion. It is my opinion from seeing this. Don't forget, I've been doing this for a long time. It is my opinion that the Labour government was returned to govern this nation unlawfully and criminally via unfree elections. In other words, it's so crooked. And don't forget, Andy, that during the first part of these hearings for this petition, 2 people from the American embassy turned up in court and made themselves aware, made the usher aware that they had an interest in this case.
Yeah, totally. Well, there you go.
So is it capable of bringing down the government? Yes, it is. Right, and people should be aware that in Nepal at the moment, in France at the moment, the people have started to rise. What we've done, right, is, and I mean the English Constitution Society, myself and you and other alternative media channels, we're trying to do this the right way. We're trying to put it in front of 2 judges, and we're hoping that them judges are not crooked. Well, these 2 obviously weren't crooked, right?
No.
But they could swap out these 2 judges for another 2 judges. And if they do that, they implant, right, their own people, because they've got control of the judges, and they got that from the Constitutional Reform Act of 2005, meaning that politicians pick the judges, and that's how we end up in this mess.
Absolutely. One thing I want to do, Graham, which I think is very important, as I've got you here, is just talk a little bit about the whole idea of this union we're in. Before I do, if I can ask anybody that's watching this, this is very important news that's been broken here today over the last half an hour. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button and share this everywhere. People need to know. Now, turning to what's going on, and I want to show a picture just in a second, but if you look at Scotland, you've got devolution. You look at Wales, you've got devolution. You look at what they've done to Northern Ireland. And this picture of England, and let's face it, this is the largest geographical landmass out of the whole area. This is where we all are. This is the regionalisation of England. You don't see any counties or shires there. You see regions. Correct. That's effectively a European concept. And what they're trying to do is dismantle us and our countries piece by piece. Yep. Now, I've started to talk about this because you have what we know as the United Kingdom, and I'm going to make Graham probably have steam coming out of his ears with what I'm about to show on the screen, but I think it's important just to point it out, and that's the Union flag right there. I'm one of the people, up until a few years ago, that said this is the flag of my country, Great Britain, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. What this flag represents is a political union which is allowing the destruction of our individual countries. Now, what people have to realise is, and I'm sure Graham can talk with more authority than me on this, is that if that union, something was to happen to it, it doesn't mean we all go our separate ways. We exist as a common law union of nations. We get on, we trade, we protect each other. The problem is, it's that bloody house in Westminster with all those politicians in. Now, if you look at independence referendums, for example, Scotland's had them, Wales has had them. I think even Northern Ireland's had them at one stage. England never has. And I ran a poll on my channel, which again, I think is very important to show everybody. I actually copied it off of Graham's, and I thought I could stick it in front of a slightly bigger audience. But this is basically, if there was a referendum on English independence, only for the English, as we've never had our own referendum, how would you vote? 76% said leave, and that was off 10,979 votes. Let that sink in. Now, you have to go around to your family and your friends, and I've had this conversation with my family, and I've said, are you English or are you British? Oh, we're British, or oh, we're both. You're fucking well not. Think about it. I don't know if you want to elaborate on this, Graham, because it's important that people get it.
Well, the most important thing, it sounds very technical, but it's not. The British are what's known as a unitary state, right? So they're not a country. It's actually states in the law books that the United Kingdom is not a country, right? The constituent countries, which basically is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, because they are separate jurisdictions, and they are. So England and Wales is a common law jurisdiction and part of England, right? And it's because they're a common law jurisdiction. They are. And it's up to the people of Wales if they want to leave the union. I've got no issue because I believe in self-determination. But a unitary state is not a country. It's just known in international law. So I'll give you another example. America is technically a unitary state, and the reason for that is because one of the states of the United States of America, which is Louisiana, is a Roman law jurisdiction. Right. Well, if you think about the UK, it's the same thing because Scotland is a Roman law jurisdiction. So therefore, you cannot be a country because you have different legal jurisdictions. And what they're trying to do, either side, the European Union and Scotland, is a pincer movement against England to turn us into, unlawfully, without asking the people, into an administrative law jurisdiction and remove all your rights and start again. Well, no one's asked the people that. So Ben Habib and Reform and Advance UK, right? They all want to keep their British title, but just to make sure everyone under English law, this is crucially important for people to understand. Under English law, right? The British Nationality Act of 1948 and 1981 is responsible for the mess you're in now, because it removed part of the English constitutional protections that were put in place by our ancestors to stop people that were not born of English parents being in that parliament. So if you think of people like David Lammy, there's many on the Conservative side as well, but David Lammy, Diane Abbott, various different people, because of our English constitution, they are not allowed to be in that parliament. Sadiq Khan couldn't be a mayor, right? Because our constitution forbids it, right? So there's a simple thing that you can do, and you can abolish, make void the British Nationality Act, which created the laws, which is the reason why you can't have an English passport, which is why you can't put a tick box as English on any official forms, regime forms, as I call them. Right, and the reason for that is the British Nationality Act. Right now, that's not going as far as taking down the actual Acts of Union, but that stops what we've got in. And everyone says as long as it's abolished, made void, not repealed, right? Because they're two different legal terms. So I'm seeing at the moment there is a way out of this, and you need real Englishmen with real English common law and statute knowledge of our constitution to put these ideas forward. And by the way, I have put this policy on is it Restore Britain? I've got an app on there and you can go and create your own policies. I've put that on there, but they haven't displayed it.
Right.
So I'm sitting there thinking, so Restore Britain's just as bad, right? Rupert Lowe is not understanding the regionalisation of England is exactly the same as what's gone on in America with FEMA regions. People being told all these, they're for death camps and all that. Massive psyop, right? It is to destroy FEMA regions in America, is to destroy the United Independent States of America in the same way as regionalisation of England is to destroy England and destroy the common law. The common law is the ultimate social justice system of law, right? And the communists need to destroy us. We're the beating heart. England is the beating heart of the United Independent States of America.
Absolutely. I mean, people say to me, they talk about the American Constitution, and they say, we could do with something like that over here. And my immediate answer is, well, where do you think they got it from?
Exactly.
Exactly. You mentioned
the Second Amendment. So we have got the right to keep and bear arms. We have got the right to full armed rebellion, right? We're one of the only nations in the world, which is why I've tried to keep pushing this forward in law, right? But not all judges are bad, just to make sure everyone is aware of this. But one of the things I can see is them removing two of these judges that are found in our favour. They are the judges that just made the ruling on this election petition are supposed to be, and I just want you to understand it, the trial judges, right? What's the odds they'll swap the judges out before we get to trial?
You know they'll try it. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I just want to show everybody something which you mentioned, and that's the fact about certain demographics not being allowed to be in Parliament, and that comes from the Act of Settlement 1700, enacted 1701. I've already highlighted it while Graham was talking to you, and there it is. That after the said limitation shall take effect as foresaid, no person born out of the kingdoms of England, Scotland, or Ireland, or the dominions thereunto belonging, although he be made a denizen, except such as are born of English parents. Now, listen, parents,
plural,
shall be capable to be of the Privy Council or a member of either the House of Parliament, or to enjoy any office, place, trust, either civil or military, or to have any grand lands of tenants or hereditaments from the crown to himself. So what that's basically saying is, if you're not born of English parents, that's mum and dad, you can't hold an office of state, you can't be mayor of London, you can't be police constable, anything like that. Now, the British Nationality Act, 1948, is the one I want to centre on. There was a list of amendments call them repealments, which is what they were in the British Nationality Act. Was it Schedule 4, Graham?
Schedule 4.
Schedule 4. They were in the wrong place for starters. They were sneaked in right at the back end of it. They should be on the front.
Correct.
And if you read down the list of repealments, one of them is the Act of Settlement, and that whole paragraph that I just read out to you has been repealed by the British Nationality Act 1948, which then allows your Mahmoods, your Lammies, and Christ knows whoever else into Parliament. So, there's probably more justification to get rid of it, but that's one powerful one right there.
So not only are you right in what, and I'm grateful that you brought that up on the screen, people really do need to get that we lost the Second World War. The whole thing has been a psyop, and the people who really won the war are the Soviet Union. And people need to understand that the Soviet Union slaughtered 70 million of their own people. The Soviets slaughtered 70. And one of the things that Joseph Stalin was in his leadership and up and coming, he was the commissar of identity, and one of the things he did was erased Russian and the various people's identities within the Soviet Union, right? And he replaced it with Soviet. Now think about what the British did then in 1948. They've in effect erased English, Scottish, Irish and Welsh identity and replaced it with British, right? Yeah. It's the same thing. And people are not getting that. They're not understanding that if you wave the British flag, you wave the flag of the enemy, right? Important for everyone to understand this. People have made reference to the British Nationality Act 1948 and 1981 as constitutional vandalism. It isn't. It is subversion of the English constitution that is known as treason, right? Because you're now affecting the future generations, and it is for us as English men and women to carry the eternal flame of freedom and pass it to the next generation, and we are the ones currently failing, right? So people need to stand up and fly the flag of St. George. They need to fly the Scottish flag, the Welsh flag, the Northern Irish flag, right? Not the British unitary state flag, right? Because absolutely that is right. The one that's doing you the damage.
Absolutely right. What I want to do, got a couple of comments here. Just want to go through, Graham, and then hopefully all this will take us up to the hour, and I think that'd be a nice place to finish then. Stephen Ferguson, reform are no different to Labour or the Conservatives. People say that reform are the only choice. That's no choice at all. I don't know what you think, Graham, but I feel that everybody's bloody trapped by this crap that we've got. You know, the uni-party system, and like it or not, reform are now part of that. Right. And one thing I keep seeing again and again and again, general elections, by-elections, whatever else, the figure is usually somewhere around the 40% mark. The people don't bother coming out and voting. We need to overwhelm the system with votes. We need to come out, stand up and say, this is our country. This is England in this case. Could be Scotland or Ireland or Wales. Correct. We've had enough. Vote.
Correct. And just to make sure, the person who wrote that is completely correct. Reform UK, so let me just make sure I'm clear on this. We couldn't reform the European Union. We left. You cannot reform the British unitary state. we need to leave, right? But what we're offering is a compromise to see if we can fix as much as possible before that. In other words, before we void the Acts of Union. And there are about 20 really important laws that need to go. And let me tell you something, Reform UK, Advance UK, they're the same thing. It's a psyop, right? And all you're seeing is the media promoting these in the background to draw the people away. And what they're actually doing is saving the unitary state and the British regime. Yeah. They're swapping out the names Labour, they're swapping out the names Conservative and Union Party, but they're the same people within them, right? It's no good to no one.
No, I've told the story about my experience with Nigel Farage, where he came down to my area and tried to win the seat down here. I've seen him in action firsthand, and when he popped back up again, I thought, oh, all right, let's see what happens. Nah, no good, because you get all the Tories jumping off the Titanic into the lifeboat, which is reform. That's the way of it. It is absolutely no good. They're all one and the same. Just to be clear as well, I get told, oh, you're against Great Britain. No, I have no problem with Britain. Britain is the island that contains England, where I was born.
Exactly. It is madness that people have been brainwashed to believe that people like me, yourself, and our opinions. What it means is you go back to a common law. If you void the Acts of Union, you go back to literally a common law union which existed from 1603, right? So the regime is actually there is what's the old saying? Never interfere with an enemy when it's destroying itself, right?
When they're making a mistake, that was Napoleon.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's exactly what they're doing. And I'm standing back saying, listen, you're destroying yourselves. You don't even realise it. We're giving you a compromise, which is you go for 20 of these subversive acts against the English, right? And abolish them. You can keep your union. You can even keep your monarchy, right? That's a different argument. What we're saying is England has been a nation since the year 927, one nation under God, right? And I just want to say this to everyone because I know we're coming towards the end of the show, right? I just want to say that I have prayed for Charlie Kirk's family, and in spirit we are with him and we are with the people of America for what they've done. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. And it's very sad that he's got young children, young wife, etc. He was one of us. But I do want everyone to understand something here. This is not a game. This is a communist takeover. And people need to understand what's going on. And if they can't get to Trump, they'll get to the people that are supporting Trump, right? And I'm one of the people that support President Trump.
I will not show the footage on this channel because it's far too graphic. I'm sure you've seen it, Graham, as I have. But for that to happen in a crowd of people that turned up to see him, and his wife and his kids were present as well, from what I read, all because it was a man that stood up and said what the majority of us are thinking and tried his hardest to be the best he could be for his country, other people as well. And the fact that certain people on one side of the political spectrum didn't agree with him, they have to shoot him because they couldn't silence him. I still can't find the words to work out how we've come to a place where we can't sit down as reasonable human beings and deal with our grievances using this instead of a gun.
You not only are you correct in saying that, and again, God give you two ears and one mouth for a reason. Listening is far more important than running your gob off, right? And the problem I'm seeing is people like Rupert Lowe, people like Advance UK, and the obvious one, which I think is a massive pincer movement with all three against the English, Reform UK. They are not listening to the English. That all they seek to do is keep in place the British military intelligence as it is, the military industrial complex as it is, the tax system that feeds them and destroys us as people and our future generations. They want to keep all that in place, right? And that is why they shot Charlie Kirk, because not only the reason why he was such a great debater is because he listened. And he listened to their arguments, and then he created, from common sense, his arguments as a rebuttal, and that's what everyone's got to understand. I mean, it's my opinion that he was potentially a senator of the future, or even he could have been a president or a vice president of the United States of America. So what do the communists do? They take him out before you even get there.
Well, a friend of mine, Paz, another YouTuber, he was in the army and he's been in combat. And he said as soon as he saw that, he thought, nah. And it didn't take very long for that news to come out. A tragedy, absolute tragedy. Now, let's get these comments done. This is interesting. June English, 1 million elections which are held every 4 years, impossible results. That's referring to the 50 now and the 50 a decade ago. That just puts it into perspective how crazy that is. This is interesting as well. This came out, I think, not long after she was elected or during the election process. That does stick out. That does. Get through these as quick as we can. Good morning, all. Been listening from the start. Just putting message out to platforms. There's only on YouTube. There's Rumble not working. Okay, that's interesting. Rumble's one that's really, very pro free speech. Santee, question now is what's next and what can we do to assist in this win against the Matrix?
So we need massive support in Runcorn and Helsby. Don't forget the trial. 2 judges moved from the High Court and go up there and set up a court and listen to the evidence. And the people of Runcorn and Helsby need to come in there and listen, and our supporters need to come in there. The more people in there and showing public interest to this, so where the media will not cover this, the mainstream media will not cover this, right? This can overturn the election and overturn the present government, right? What's being said in that trial, right? That's how important this is. The Absolutely. People need to attend, because you're going to be listening not to a boring British barrister, King's Counsel, solicitor, boring the judges to death. You're going to be listening to me telling the judge the facts, right? That's it. And if you want to see a normal, everyday working class person stand up for you, the disabled, the pensioners, and the real people of England, then we need people to come to that trial.
Absolutely. I think the last word of this sentence is a very telling one, and I think that's a massive problem within our country, and it's something you've been talking about for donkey's years, Graham, and I am quite pleased to see that it's starting to be spoken about more and more in the public space.
Yeah. If you went to the daddydragon.co.uk website, you will see the Fabians. There is a 3-part series I put on there, very detailed, and it's entitled "The Fabians, the Masters of Subversion."
Absolutely, and after all, what's their logo? Their picture.
Wolf in sheep's clothing.
You got it. Elaine, losing the election is not the point of this action. It proves just how corrupt the elections were and will continue to be. And if it proves reform has a massive landslide, all the better. That's one of the options. If there's a recount, she could win by a landslide.
That's exactly. So in other words, the people, and in the judgment, the judge says that the people's opinion should be known to the people, should be known to the people. And if that means that the Labour Party at the vote absolutely collapsed and Sarah Palin got thousands of votes, literally overwhelmingly, then the people should know that. The point I'm making now, Sarah Palin certainly miscalculated by trying to strike out this petition, because what it actually means is the legal advisors to reform and Sarah Palchin have advised her it don't matter how we win, even if it's corrupt, as long as we win, right? And they don't want to take the risk, right? Bearing in mind they stole £500 deposit off of us, the English Constitution Party, and many of our members are disabled and pensioners, right? That money comes from them, and in effect, the corruption within that election stole that money from us, right? And by the way, we've had to pay for the £5,000 deposit. We've had to pay for all these things. So normal pensioners, just normal everyday pensioners and disabled people have funded this, right? And Sarah Palchin was trying to get it struck out.
Tells you everything you want to know. Cool. Hitler cat, love it. Call for fresh election. Reform would win again with bigger majorities. It's a waste of time. It's not a waste of time, because if they won by a bigger majority, it would just prove the point that there was interference in the election in the first place. Not only that election, other elections. You know, that is the whole point. Next one. Yeah, this is a common problem. They don't let you show English flags on YouTube. You just get a black thing instead. That's a common problem that's come up a lot.
Unlike Rumble, right? So Rumble have allowed on our channel. So you've got the full English show on Rumble, right? Which I present every evening at 8 p.m. live, just to make sure. They allowed us put English flags in there and all our English emblems inside the own app. So all of the people would have become members. And we obviously, when we do a vote and things like that, I'll say, show the English flag, and then I'll bring it up on the screen, and you'll see the screen just alight with English flags, and people love it, right? Well, Rumble allowed us to do that. They respect England.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there you go. The English Constitution and English common law are the solution. That's the whole point. The majority of the issues we face, the solutions are in the Constitution. That's why they want to get rid of it, because a lot of these problems, they don't want to be solved. This is not about winning an election, but having free transparency. Absolutely. That's the whole point.
Yep.
Another couple. Never even thought I'd say this, but I'm starting to miss the competence of the Tories. I'm not even going to comment on that. Competency, yes. Tories, no. G Hammer, UK hasn't had a good government for as long as I've been alive, to be honest. Thatcher was in power when I was born. AFAIK. I think I was about 2 years old when Thatcher came to power, something daft like that. But there you go. Anyway, Graham, that's everybody's comments. Again, just to reiterate, that's massive news. You know, you have won the right to have a trial in Runcorn and Helsby to discuss and disseminate that by-election and to determine whether there should be a recount, null and void the whole thing and do it again, or whatever else they decide. So I'm sure you will update us as and when, you know, more information comes through. And apart from that, as you know full well, I always like to give my guests last words.
Well, again, I'm grateful to you, Andy, because you and some others, a handful of alternative media. So the alternative media have been hijacked by the British regime as well. But you, as one of the people speaking about that, you know how important it is. So I'm grateful for that. And that's why you have got an exclusive to this information. The mainstream media have not spoken about this, will not speak about this. The judgment has been handed down, and it is highly likely that this judgment could bring down the Labour government, right? And yet again, you've got these people in the background playing politics. But you can find me on Rumble, the only true free speech platform in the world, which all of these regimes are attacking, right? Because you get people like me and Andy, by the way, on Rumble. So it's called the Full English Show, and I'm live every night at 8 p.m. You can also follow me on Twitter at English Exit. at English exit. So remember, it doesn't have to be an English exit, right? Although that's what we support, but we are up for listening to people. The problem is they won't listen. And there's only one direction this is going in. And you've only got to look at what's just happened in Nepal. You've only got to look at what's just happened to Charlie Kirk in America. This isn't a game, people, right? People need to understand this is not a game, right? I don't get paid for what I do. All I'm doing is trying to save England.
Absolutely. And as the saying goes, and we'll finish with this, apart from please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and bloody blast this everywhere. I think the saying goes, if not us, who? If not now, when? And think of your kids. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, everybody. It's a goodbye from Graham, a goodbye from me. And as always, I look forward to talking to you soon.